We have a couple more minutes. We are now live. Ben, just so you know.
Okay. Can you hear me just fine?
Yeah, we hear you great.
Okay, good.
And I just sent you a text message.
No, you heard all that. It was muted at the time.
Ben, I
Okay,
just
thank
sent you
you.
a text message.
Yep, I got it. Thank you. Okay. Are we ready?
I believe so.
Okay. Call the board meeting to order. We'll start off with Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Potter, would you do the honors of leading the Pledge of Allegiance?
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
America and to the republic that stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll start off with public communications. I believe Mr. Northerns has a couple things he wants to present.
Okay. My name is Jordan Northerns. Thank you for letting me be here tonight, and I'll just try to keep it real quick. The high school band is asking permission to take a trip in the spring this year, and as we have in the past, we're trying to take them somewhere where they can perform and they can be judged and be evaluated, because we feel like that's the highest educational quality of a trip that we can achieve. So that's what we're pursuing, and this year we're looking at Kansas City. We're trying to keep it a little bit closer to home this year and a little bit cheaper for the kids, just considering how things have gone. So we're putting that request before the board tonight, and also a request of $1,000 to help with the trip to make it more affordable for the kids as well. So that's item number one. Are there any questions about our high school band trip?
What is that? How much do the students have to come up with?
Right now, we're looking at around $400 per student. If the board were to donate $1,000, I think that would drop it $100 per student. And we haven't finalized our itinerary yet. So there are some things that we're looking at swapping in and out to possibly make it a little bit cheaper still for the kids. That way they don't have to do as much fundraising or cough up as much money.
And even though it is Kansas City, it would be Missouri potential, so they have to
Yes.
come to the board for out-of-state travel.
Yes, we're looking at going to some museums, taking them to an instrument manufacturing company called BAC, where they can see how trumpets and trombones are made, to a dinner theater or a concert, and then also to perform in the Parks World of Fun for an adjudicated panel. The other item before the board tonight has been a dream of mine for several years. We would like to start a Triumph chapter here at Circle High School, which is an honor society for music students specifically. This is a national organization that you can charter at a school. It doesn't cost very much money to start. It costs $100 to start a chapter, and you re-up every year. Some of the things that the students would do is, just like NHS, they would have to maintain a minimum GPA. They would have to be inducted They would have to have some sort of dues. I think we can set those dues locally as cheap as we want, just to sustain the chapter. And they would have to do some sort of a service project for the school. Generally for Tri-M, that's pretty minimal. It can even be just ushering concerts and cleaning up after concerts, kind of like the cheerleaders do sometimes at football games. But we think that it would be a great way to honor some of our students that are high achievers in the music department, and Mrs. McKee and I have joined forces to try to start an honor society. So that's our other request for the board this evening. Are there any questions about Tri-M?
I would just make a comment to that. I think that's something that we haven't had that I think is truly needed for our kids who are in music. I think it would be a great opportunity for them and a resume builder as well.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. And you guys have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Norman.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to approval of the agenda. Was there any additions or changes to the agenda?
No, sir.
Okay, I guess from a little bit of logistics, whoever makes the motion, if you'll give your name as you make the motion, and same way on the second, give your name and as you do the second. We can do a roll or just a standard vote. Jared, you might jump in and say aye if you're, or nay, whichever way you're voting. So I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved, Christie?
Do I hear a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Go ahead. Aye, Christie.
Jake. Hi, Chris.
Okay. Jared's muted. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to say aye or not. But we have a majority, so the motion passes. We'll move on to the consent agenda, which includes the minutes for the 3 special meetings and the regular meeting in September, the gifts and grants, surplus property, and the interlocal 638 minutes. So is there any questions on the consent agenda? Are we still attached?
We are. Any
Okay.
questions on the agenda?
There's
Can you
no
hear us okay?
If there's no questions, I'd seek a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved, Casey.
Do I hear a second?
Second, Christie.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Then it's
Aye, Jared.
6-0.
Okay, motion passes. All right, we'll move on to the treasurer's report.
Well, we're having some technical difficulties with our treasurer right now, Liz, so I can go through this. The treasurer report, no issues. You can see the adjusted or the balance statement there, along with all of the cash summary reports and investment income. Obviously, the expenses there for the budget worksheet are as normal, and you know, we don't see any major surprises at this point. As we continue to talk about this, we do expect utilities to increase, in which we budgeted for. So we feel pretty good about where we're at budget-wise in relationship to the first few months of the first fiscal year here. So, any questions? And as you know, when January hits, February hits, we'll start the process of providing projections of where we think we'll be to end the year. But for right now, we'll start those in January.
Okay, if nobody has any questions on the treasurer's report, I'd seek a motion to approve the treasurer's report as presented.
So moved, Christie.
Do I hear a second?
Second, Casey.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? say aye.
6-0.
Aye, Jared.
Okay. So I believe we have a unanimous vote here, so motion passes. Thank you. All right, next item, administrative reports.
Okay, principal reports are in your packet. Once, as again, I appreciate the principals putting this stuff together. I think it gives a lot of information about what's going on in the buildings. The AD report for both high school and middle school are included in there that gives records and those kind of things for each team. So appreciate them doing that. If you have any questions on that, please let us know.
Okay. Next thing's the learning and intervention report.
Mrs. Young.
All right. 5 areas to report on this time. The first one, social emotional learning. I introduced that last time with second step being implemented in the elementary schools and the college, the career and college competency program in the high school. Schools have figured out where to implement these lessons at this time. It may look different at each elementary school at this point, but they are rolling it out, and we have some very excited teachers to be able to teach these subjects and to teach that content. With that in mind, we have dove into Panorama, and I'm hoping that in the future I can show you the Panorama platform so you guys can see what we see. Today, the principals and the counselors receive training on Panorama, and it's a one-stop data shop, basically is what it is. So if you're looking at the screen, you're going to see how is the student doing with their grades, how is the student doing with their attendance, how is the student doing with their behavior, and how is the student reporting self-reporting social emotional learning. An example like that is, do you feel connected to someone in the school? If you have an issue, do you feel like you can go to someone in the school and talk to? So those 4 areas on the snapshot of the student you can see. And so if they are experiencing academic challenges and they are not in school and they haven't reported or they have a high behavior incident, we can start putting things into place to help the student become a little more connected and find the gaps and the holes that they need for the academics. So that's a one-stop data shop. It's really, really cool. So November 5th, the teachers are going to be introduced to this platform, and we're going to have them log in. We're going to have them do some digging just to start see the fun things that you can find on Panorama and how to set up groups. So if students, let's say a student's academics fall, then that teacher can be alerted right then. And it's something that Power School doesn't even do for us. So we can find that on Panorama. So it's really, really cool. Curriculum committee met last Wednesday, and we're getting ready to dive into picking social studies resources and curriculums. Social studies is up for review this year. And then so is our PE curriculum if they need a static support. So this doesn't cover curriculum as far as like consumables for PE. So if they want to have a health book or something along the lines of that, this is what PE starts to look at, okay? MTSS is in progress. Elementary schools and middle school have their group set. We are diving into the professional development for secondary on December 6th with support from Greenbush on specific ELA interventions that can happen at middle and high school. So that is in the process of being put into place.
And ELA, English language.
English language arts. I need to remember that you guys don't speak my language. At the last in-service data-wide district data-wide data was shared, and we talked about the difference between a norm data point and a criterion reference data point, and how the two work together, but how they are also seen separately. So that norm data point is an easy reference would be like an ACT score. Where does that fall on a norm scale? Okay. And so when you start breaking that down, where are they at? Are they at the 90th percentile? So if they're at the 90th percentile, then All those students that are below the 90th percentile, they are operating at a higher level than that. So 90th percentile and above is what you look at for certain scores. When we look at our own district data, we look at an 80%, a 15%, and a 5%. So we want 80% of our students or higher functioning at what we call a tier 1 level, at core level. So when they are functioning at 80% or higher, we know that our core content and that the instruction in the classroom is working. Okay. Our first data point that we take on FastBridge really is a data point from what they retained from the year before, because there's not been new instruction really happening in the classroom at that point. When we look at the winter scores and the spring scores, and we can kind of start looking more toward that 80, 15, and 5%. So right now, we are sitting at a 73%, where we should be at an 80%, but that is higher. We are actually functioning higher, performing higher than we have for the last 5 years. So that's a really, really good data point. The middle data point is 8%, which if you look at the scale, that should be around 15% or higher. So we're at 8% for tier 2. And then we're at 19% for tier 3. Most of those are falling in the 3rd grade and below, when we look at where the interventions need to happen, which makes sense, because if you look at 3rd grade, their first normal year of school wasn't a normal year. So that's where most of our interventions are falling right now.
That Panorama, is it not connected to our school at all?
It does. It pulls the academic data and the behavior data and the attendance data straight from PowerSchool.
Okay.
And it's a 24-hour turnaround. So on Tuesday, you can see what happened on Monday. So it's really, really quick.
And that's the beauty of it. It's one single point login for our teachers to take a look at individual data. I really like it too for the reasons of being able to share some of this data with our parents in regards to academic successes and those kind of things. So should have it all right there, which is really nice.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Young. Next item on the agenda is the Community Development Report. Mrs. Potter.
Hello. So I'm going to go over what we focused on in September and then give you a little insight into what we are focusing on in the next month or so. We obtained a couple sponsorships from Velocity. They have been very generous with us. They're doing the Fan of the Week for the entire year. And they also sponsored our Student of the Month at all of our buildings. So one student per building is being recognized as that Student of the Month. If you guys are on social media, you saw they just went out last Friday. Each of the schools will receive part of that sponsorship to celebrate their students. We also have a we have a partnership with Kansas Joint and Spine, and that is it's with our athletic trainer. So we kind of got that off the ground, and we're getting some signage and banners going with that. So that's kind of the sponsorship side. Otherwise, we've been spending some time with the COVID dashboard and trying to get that communication out to our members. Lots of spreadsheets with the nurses trying to make their job at tracking all that information a little bit easier. Spent some time with Mr. Ralph with the fine arts. I don't know if you guys remember that community partners program that I showed you. We added in the fine arts part to that to try to get some supplemental money in for his programs for fine arts. And then we've been working on school media with the sports and just new letterhead and our Swift K-12, just that branding piece. And then our big thing in the last month or so has been the foundation golf tournament that we helped put together with the foundation. That happened on October 2nd. And right now we are sitting at just under $11,000 made from that is what we should clear from that Dick Nybarger Circle Foundation tournament. So that was kind of the past, and that happened in 6 weeks. So that's not bad for 6 weeks of getting our sponsors came through in a big way like they always do. It was a pretty good time, even though we had a little bit of rain and a little intermission in the middle there. So that was September. It was a pretty busy month. Coming up, we are looking at sponsorships for the gym and kind of winter sponsorships. So the marquee sign, banners for the gym and for our basketball programs and our wrestling programs. So that's what we're looking at next. We are working, I'm working with Bree Crawford on the career and college readiness program and getting that communication out. Also the SEL, really just communicating to our stakeholders, what is second step? What is Panorama and what is our career and college readiness program? I think the biggest thing is we have all this stuff happening. Now we need to get it on the internet and put out to all of our patrons. And that, there's going to be a lot of just content on the website that we're building out and hopefully getting those programs out to the public. Any questions, sir? All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Nice work on the golf tournament, by the way. That was a lot of fun. I think we let everybody have fun.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Potter. And I echo the deal on the golf tournament. That was a very good, very successful event. Moving on, and I think we're ready for the superintendent's report and bond project update.
Yeah, I've got Brooks here from Simpson to kind of give us a rundown of what is happening currently with the project and where we go from there.
I got a quick little summary of where we're at and where we're going, so I'll pass that around the room. If you guys want me to get this as part of the bond packet, I can try and get that out ahead of time, but
It's okay.
kind of go through the projects from the most complete project to the infancy projects. At the Oil Hill restroom remodel, we're wrapping up that project right now. We've got the partitions and sort of accessories going in here today and tomorrow. Final clean on Wednesday, and then do punch list on Thursday, so that project will be ready to turn over. We've also bid out the pre-K classroom addition / renovation. We had good coverage on all trades, but you know, overall, the budget probably isn't where we had hoped it would be on that project. Overall, I think the Oil Hill budget remains intact, but the pre-K addition really just kind of, the pricing wasn't as beneficial as we had hoped for. I think it was a lot due to a small renovation tucked in with a lot of utilities and a lot of things happening in that one little space. So, you know, some of the unit costs and stuff may not have held where we had hoped they would. So right now what we're doing is we're going back and looking at reevaluating the project in general, looking at other options that we have in the building to accommodate these needs and see what we can do. So we're really in the middle of that process right now. We've got a meeting scheduled for tomorrow to really discuss and dive into some of the design options that we have. So it's not a done deal right now. We're trying to look at any options we can think of to make this project a little more economical. The middle school, the safe room additions, we've got the earthwork started, building pads are complete. We've really been kind of in a holding pattern, waiting on rebar and concrete crews to arrive. So we are getting ready to start that this week, pending weather. We do have a lot of rebar and masonry materials on site now. So as soon as we get weather, we should have crews available to get started on the structural installations for that project. We are starting to meet now on a bi-weekly basis. So really every week we meet. Tomorrow is our design meeting. The other week is our construction meeting. So we meet every week for bond project updates with staff and really go through any details we need on construction updates with the direct project teams. Greenwich Elementary is the next one on the docket, and Gravity Works is trying to finalize those construction documents here by the end of October. We are planning to have that out to bid in November. So not a lot of update, or changes really to the project, but we are finalizing construction documents and turning that project out to the streets for bids here in November. Towanda is really following the Greenwich design work, so we've got a lot of schematic design. We kind of know the shape of the building and what it's going to look like, but a lot of the design work that, really putting the systems and the structure in place is going to follow Greenwich in design. Bend Elementary, we have started the schematic design process on that one. Gravity Works met with the district and the staff members last week to kind of unveil the schematic design for that project and get their initial reactions and feedback. Our meeting tomorrow, one of the big talking points is any reactions from the conversations that took place last week, and what adjustments we need to make, if any, and keep moving on in design of that one. So I think of the next big design conversation we're going to need to have is mechanical systems, and really start to understand how the building functions and what the structure looks like, and then dive down into some of the engineering details for that project. Support services, again, that one's kind of the last project or location on the board to go through design, and we're really looking to dig into that as soon as we get Bend Elementary out on the streets. So we are starting to look into some of the district security needs from both security cameras and door access control as well. We've got a draft of the RFP that we are getting ready to turn out to vendors. We really feel as a design and construction team that it's in the district's best interest to have a single vendor that works with the district and us on security needs for the district as a whole. So we are looking to try and send out a RFP packet that would allow vendors to turn in their pricing on a project, one of the projects. We would also look at their capabilities and their end user platforms, so we can make a decision that is in the district's best interest. We would have a little bit of pricing structure that would hold us accountable throughout construction, but it would help us have one single platform that you guys can maintain and operate as a district, and it allows us to help integrate that into the design as we move forward in the project. So we've started the ball rolling on that, and we've got a lot of interest. I think there's probably 5 vendors that are pretty interested in that project. But anyways, that's kind of where we're at on construction and design work.
That last part would allow like our SROs to get onto one site and be able to get to cameras in any building that they needed to in an emergency, or ability to lock down buildings, with one site rather than jumping, oh yeah, Greenwich is on this one and Oil Hill, and oh, now I need to log into this app and do it. It'd just be one district wide.
They have access to that on their cell phones through an app.
Yeah.
That's the desire. We'll kind of see what options and everything that's out there. We haven't heard their presentation yet, but I'm sure that they will be able to do that.
Most of the systems are at right now. The other thing it allows you to do is if there's weak points or as structures are built or classrooms take on different functions, if there's door access control needs or security camera needs in the future, it's non-proprietary equipment is the way we're proposing it, that, whether it's, I'm not going to get into brand names, but whether it's one vendor or the next, if you choose that, down the road, 2 or 3 years from now, you're not really happy with their service, you can allow another vendor to come in and add on to the system and still function.
And back to that, man, a little bit, our SROs, phone would be good. They all have laptops and hotspots as well.
Right.
So, for both of them, so they can access those through that if needed.
A lot of SROs in the other districts, I know that, they may have 6 screen monitor setups in their office to where they can literally
Yeah.
see, but you're all running off of one platform. It's just different IP addresses and different cameras that you're looking at, but it takes a lot to monitor that amount of footage that's coming in.
Yeah. And that's important for them to be able to do that, but it's also, we want them out and around our kids too, so. we don't want them just-
Will this new, internet service, is that gonna help with this housing?
Oh, definitely.
When is that?
It's done.
Oh, it's done, yeah, okay, great.
We're operating right now.
Oh, good.
I've noticed on kind of a different subject, but I noticed on our live stream, it seems to be working a lot better.
Yeah, our upload speed increased dramatically.
Thanks, Brooks. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Brooks. I believe next item is enrollment. Mr. Potter?
Yes, I've included the enrollment numbers in your packet. From a head count perspective, this is our highest enrollment ever. So we continue to grow. Of course, as you know, audit comes out and then they figure FTE based on transportation weightings, at risk, those kind of things in which you determine your FTE. But you can see, as I mentioned, -2 is 3-year-old, -1, that's kind of the coding process that comes directly out of Power School. Is your preschoolers, and 0 is your kindergarten, and everything else is the grade level from there. So really good numbers, and we're certainly looking forward to continued growth as we're talking about increasing our facilities. So.
Do you anticipate having to republish budget with higher numbers?
No, there are, the numbers this year are moved into, from an FTE headcount perspective, your budget next year is what you use. So our budget is built on last year's numbers for our highest of the 3-year average. And so these will be factored in next summer when we build our budget.
Okay. Any other questions on the enrollment? Okay, we have no old business. We'll move on to new business. Item for early graduation request. Mr. Potter?
Yes, we have a student who is requesting early graduation. Our policy states that a student who, for educational, vocational reasons, wishes to graduate from high school less than the time a normal 4-year grade 9 through 12 sequence may request permission for early graduation. This student will have met all requirements for graduation at Circle High School in December of 2022. Therefore, I would recommend that we grant this early graduation request for this student.
Does anybody have any questions on this issue? If not, I'd seek a motion to approve the early graduation request as presented.
So moved by Jared.
Thank you, Jared. Do I hear a second?
Second, Christie.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
Thank you. We'll move on to bus bid approval.
Okay, we've talked a little bit in the past about trying to update our bus fleet a little bit. Part of that is a desire within the first 8 years of buying a bus, we get a depreciation value for those buses. And so if we were able ever to get to that point where all of those were in that depreciation cycle, it would help us purchase those buses and get on a good rotation. Getting to that point is difficult. There were several years back when education budgets were really tight that we got behind and we've been trying to buy at least one bus and one vehicle in a year or sometimes two buses. But getting caught up on that is pretty difficult. Right now, we have about half of our fleet that is on our route buses that are in that depreciation cycle, and the other half it's not. What I would like to propose this year is that we go ahead and purchase two buses and try to get back to that cycle as much as we can moving forward. What makes right now an important thing, normally I would bring this to you in the past, like a February, maybe March bid for these. But at the end of this month, they're expecting about a 10 to 15% increase on buses. And so would like to get in on the pricing as it is currently. The other factor right now is that they're expecting at least 150-day build time for these. That would put delivery of these buses in April. And just in case it were to get delayed a little bit longer from that, that's kind of the best case right now. That way we would have them for next year for sure. We would get them in the summer. We'd make sure we could, test them out, get them inspected by the highway patrol and have them ready to go for next year. So possibly even the end of this year if their estimates are better than what they think right now. So would like to propose that we go ahead and purchase two buses before the rate increase. And the total on that is $183,320.
Who are you recommending going with?
Midwest Transit, those would be the international buses with a low bid. And those would coincide with the ones we have across the street, the majority of them. So parts and things like that, we would have some interchangeability potential there and same vendor.
You're the one that offers a 3-year, 50,000 mile warranty, is that correct?
I think so. I don't want to quote that, would be wrong. Yes.
I have a question. If the costs are going up 15%, and we have several buses that are, if I remember looking at the report, we have some fairly old buses that are getting worn out. Should we be looking at 3 buses instead of 2?
You know,
We kind of talked about that.
I mentioned that to Mr. Potter the other day, go, well, I wonder if we should go for 3 and ask for 3, but that's a pretty good chunk. One of the things that we talked about and the reason why we were fairly conservative in the past was pre-bond election. We were really needing to budget for rooftops and things like that with the bond. A lot of those things will be taken care of. The other thing that I would look at with the capital outlay budget this year is, due to some of the ESSER monies and things like that, spark money, we were able to take care of a lot of our technology through some of those grants this last year. And it did not impact our capital outlay budget as much as we normally would. So there is some potential. I mean, with our technology budget, we did buy a laser engraver this year, took part of that, but it was still less than an average year. So I think that is an option if the board would like to entertain that. I think we could make that work, and it might not be a bad move.
Do you think?
Well, I guess.
No, go ahead, Ben.
I guess my thought is it's not like we're earning interest on the capital outlay fund or anything like that that we could use. I mean, if it's going to save us some money and we got a good balance on capital outlay, it might be a smart move. I'm just throwing that out for see what the board thinks.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ben. One question I had, will they look at that bid a little closer if we throw another bus on there?
No, these are state bid prices, so they're already bid for, over lots and lots of buses, so it doesn't change in that aspect. I would like for it to.
Yeah.
But we did kind of talk about that. It's kind of one of those deals where you kind of balance it out, what's the feeling of the board and how much, would we need to go, but as Mr. Jansen said, if he feels comfortable with that, I certainly can support that as well.
I think I would caution going too many more buses in 1 year, just because then you get this big blip. And all of a sudden, they age out around the same time, just for future. But I feel comfortable with the 3 buses. I just would not want to go too big of all of a sudden a bulge that would time out at the same time.
Well, our buses average about the same amount of miles a year.
No, it depends on the route that they run. Our routes vary greatly.
Is that something you guys switch buses out and try to keep the miles?
Some, but they also, really, they try to keep the bus with the same driver, because that driver then has ownership of that bus. And, if the seat gets messed up or whatever, they take care of their bus. And if I take care of my bus really well, and then I have to switch with someone who maybe didn't take care of it quite as well, there's less ownership involved with that.
And another factor would be sometimes just the size of the bus is necessary for that particular route, especially shuttles and those kind of things.
There are some of these buses that they don't put on all the routes when they're brand new either, because we have some that are really rough on buses. And so quite often they won't put the brand new bus out on the route. It's going to be really rough on it right away. So there's lots of considerations, I guess, with that.
Well, our reimbursement of transportation, the 80% will be greater if we have 3 buses too.
Yeah, it would definitely increase that. Insurance would increase a little bit versus your older buses would. But, the savings that you're going to get out of one bus, 10–15%. So you're looking at anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 savings, plus your depreciation expense that we can turn in. It's probably not a bad idea.
Well, you've got reduced maintenance too. If you're getting rid of another old bus, that's reduced maintenance on an old bus.
Right.
Absolutely.
And we are behind a little bit, so I feel pretty good about that aspect also.
If I calculate that right, it's $274,980 for 3 buses.
Yes, that's what I had.
We could make the motion for $275,000 and make it nice and simple.
Yes.
If that's what the board wants. Does any board members have a concern about getting 3 buses versus 2? If not, I'd seek a motion to approve the purchase of 3 route buses for an amount of $275,000.
Casey.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Motion carried 6-0.
Okay, thank you. Take good care of those buses, Mr. Jansen.
I will do my best.
All right. Okay, next item is HVAC service contract.
Okay. Due to some of our personal losses in our maintenance department over the last year, we've really found ourselves being very reactionary, dealing with an issue when it comes up, rather than being as preventative as we'd like to be. Part of that is when we, every time something happens, we're calling out a service provider to come and give us bids, and then, it takes a little while to get the bids and we get the repair work, and it's a more expensive way to go. And it's also a little slower process each time. In talking with some of the different service providers that are out there, and then also talking with some other schools, Andover has a contract with a service provider called 316 Mechanical. They just do Andover, and then they do some little work for the rest of the month. They service Andover for about 10 days out of the month, which works out to be about half of or 2 weeks out of their month. And in talking with that gentleman, he would love to bring Circle on under the same deal as what Andover does. That would bring us online kind of as sole providers. So for him, he could contract out his whole month. He has some other people that work for him that will help kind of at a lower rate. But anyway, he can do some of this work and take care of our HVAC needs. I did call Andover and talk to them, and they have just been elated with the work that they've received from him. He has worked basically solely at their company when he worked for Train, and then also when he worked for Cruise. I was just combining those two. When he worked for Train and Cruise in the past, he comes with pretty substantial experience, and now they've just hired him directly. It's been a huge savings for them. One of the other aspects of it is he does not carry the parts, and so there's no markup on the parts. He would order them. We would go pick up the parts at the dealer cost, not at the not at the markup that the other companies would give us. Normally that markup is between 30 and 40% on parts. So we would be getting them at a reduced price. Plus, we would not be having them run all over the place to get the parts. When they come on site, they would be doing the actual work. Our people could run, pick up the parts and have them up here for them. One other aspect of this is we do have a gentleman that is working with some HVAC. We hired him pretty much fresh out of school. The school focused a lot on residential units, not as much on commercial, but he's been great to work with, just doesn't have the experience. And that's one of the things that Andover said, that they have someone in the same general boat as him, and he's been a great mentor for that individual to help get them up to speed and hopefully provide more service to the district as we go along. They would like a year commitment from us, and we could renegotiate that after 6 months. And, we're not the size of Andover. I think because of being reactionary the way we are, it's going to take 6 months of preventive and getting everything back up to snuff. After that time, if we feel like we can go back a little bit on our days and reduce our commitment, he's perfectly fine with that. So just wanted to present an option, and I think it's a good option for us because we've been struggling for quite a while to find personnel in this regard.
And if you recall, we bought 3 compressors at the beginning of the year to be installed at Greenwich. And tell me if I'm wrong on this, Mr. Jansen, but that non-markup would apply to those big ticket items as well.
Correct.
So we spent $25,000 on those 3 compressors, am I not mistaken?
A little more than that now.
So theoretically, say you get them for 18, you're really saving some serious money there going through this, and they can install those. And sometimes the potential, if we were to need a full unit, they can install those as well.
Yes.
Under this contract, unless they have to go overtime for it.
You say he is local?
He is local, and kind of, I talked a little bit with Andover, and they really like the idea. If we were to come on board, I was a little nervous if they'd want to share, but they really like the idea because regardless, we would have him here either in Circle or in Andover, so that all of a sudden we have an emergency, we could just call him and he would take off from Andover and come here, kind of have an agreement with them as a local district that, hey, if we get an emergency or we get in a bind, or if you get in a bind, we'll share him during that time and he'll make up his hours otherwise. So yes, it would be a local thing, and he is pretty local too. I'm not sure exactly where he lives.
Didn't we do this 20 years ago?
That was a little bit different aspect. Yeah, that was in order to pay for some of the digital controls, I guess, at the time, trying to get in an energy management company is what it was. And that was a long-term commitment. It was, I think, 15. I was not here at the time, but 15-year commitment that we engaged in at that time. And actually, a lot of the controls that we purchased throughout that process may have dated out in 10 years, but we still had to pay out the rest of that contract. This is not anything like that.
Short-term deal.
Well, and this is just solely maintenance. It's not for equipment, it's not for, and it's, you know, just a 1 year type of deal.
Does he have, it's not just a one guy, right? He has.
He has some other people that he has working for him, yes.
Do I hear any other questions or concerns regarding the proposed service contract? If not, I'd seek a motion to approve the yearly HVAC service agreement with 316 Mechanical to be reevaluated in 6 months.
So moved, Christine.
Do I hear a second? I didn't quite cut out. Did somebody second that?
Jared.
Okay. All in favor?
Motion carried.
Hi, Jared.
Okay, thank you. Next item is the band trip to Kansas City.
Okay, Mr. Northern's presented his information. I would say that, obviously, I support the trip. We've done that, for quite some time, pre the last couple of years. And we've always supported that to, take the band there and have a great learning experience for them in Kansas City. So I seek approval for that.
Anybody have any questions?
Is this the same amount we normally give in the past?
Yes.
It is.
There's no other questions. I'd seek a motion to approve the out-of-state travel to for the spring band trip to Kansas City, Missouri, and provide $1,000 support. Do I hear a motion?
So moved, Jake.
Do I hear a second?
Second, Casey.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Motion carried 6-0.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is the Music Honor Society. You guys heard the presentation. Does anybody have any questions on that? If not, I'd seek a motion to approve the request for the Music Honor Society chapter establishment.
So moved, Jared.
Do I hear a second?
Second, Christie.
All in favor?
Motion carried. Motion carried 6-0.
Thank you. All right. Next item is future meeting live stream. Just needed a discussion on whether we want to continue live streaming, if there's a need, what's the board's feelings on this?
The one question I had earlier is that, Ben, for instance, you and Jared couldn't be here tonight, make sure we can still do the Zoom side of it. And from what I understand, that is possible, so.
Yeah, we could, if people are, and I think that's the best way to do it, to be honest, if we can get to, if a person who's absent can get to a computer, I think it makes sound a lot better for that individual, and them communicating back to us makes it a lot better. But, during the pandemic, we were required, during the emergency declaration, we were required to have these live stream, and those that can't make it could actually attend. We're no longer under that. So in an effort to get back to as normal operations as possible, that's, I think, from our perspective, from my perspective a little bit, but I think we just checked, we had 11 viewing tonight. Is that right?
Yes.
We've had more views. If you look back in September, because not my views, but people who viewed it afterwards, we had in September 250, August, the August meeting, there was 1,400, July 93, June 100, May 175. I feel like as we move out of this pandemic and the more those numbers would fall as it is tonight, but, you never can tell, but
I'd like to see us get back to regular operations. If someone wants to come, they can come, you know.
If we need to move to the auditorium or wherever, that's definitely an option.
oh, absolutely.
And those numbers we presented, I've been monitoring them. They're not on all during that meeting. Those are the ones who went back and viewed it after the fact. So, I mean, I monitor them every meeting and the highest we reached tonight was 13. We're sitting at 11 right now.
I like normal.
Absolutely.
Is that the kind of the consensus? If the consensus is we go back to normal, I would seek a motion to discontinue the live streaming for future meetings until otherwise determined.
So moved by Jared.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it. Christie?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
Okay, thank you. We don't have any executive session scheduled. Is that still correct, Mr. Potter?
Yes, sir. No executive session, correct.
Okay, we'll move on to personnel resignations. Is there any comments on resignations? If not, then I'd seek a motion to approve resignations as presented.
So move, Casey. I'll second that, Jake.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
6-0.
Thank you. Appointments, same thing, unless somebody has questions. If somebody's ready to make a motion to approve the appointments as presented, I'd seek that.
So moved by Jared.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second, Christie?
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
All right. I appreciate everybody working and being patient with us online guys. I technically by rules and everything, I probably could have been there. I just felt like it'd be safer if I wasn't in an enclosed room. So hopefully that's just a mute point there. So if there's nothing else at this point, I would declare the meeting adjourned.
One other announcement.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay. Next meeting will be at the middle school. So our November meeting is at the middle school.
Okay.
Those who were, Jared, Ben, Nathan, we will send the handout that Brooke sent out. We will send that electronically when this meeting is over.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.